it's Nikki Lane, and my new album, Denim Diamonds, is out now. So I wanted to take a moment, or a few, and tell you the stories that are the most intimate to me, that helped me create the record that you're listening to. We're here in my home today because I am gearing up to be gone for a long time, which is what most of the records have been about. The things that were happening in my life, and as well as the things that I was experiencing by going out on tour and becoming a country singer full-time over the last decade. This record was much more reflective, and so with all that vulnerability, I was also searching for a rock edge. I wanted something maybe to balance out that softer side that I think I was showing inadvertently. And I got lucky because Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age and many other bands and collaborative projects producers said he would work on the record. A previous manager had posed the idea, and I was excited that it had worked out because he was based in Burbank, California, and had a Pink Duck studio, a large space that's beautiful and full of antiques, just the kind of thing I like to create in, and said that we could put a roster together of great members. It was hot in the middle of 2020, so we had to test in with like a little bubble to make sure everybody was healthy every time we showed up. And I think that created a sense of intimacy and also gave us an opportunity to get the people who were also anchored in LA at the time. We had Mikey Shoes from Queens, as well as Elaine Johannes, who played with him for many years and works on many other artists' music, as well as Carla Azar from a great band I grew up listening to, Auto Lux, but also plays with people like Jack White and just about any band that she wants to in LA. She was doing a couple records at the time when I was there, and so we were able to bring in somebody, Matt Helders from the Arctic Monkeys, to fill in those dates, and also just because we wanted him to be there as much, and we had the great opportunity to put them both to work a lot on that record. Plus MVP for me, Matthew Penn, who is my pedal steel player and guitar player, and Josh had encouraged me to find someone that I thought could help represent my goals in the record. So having somebody in my band that's that close and knows all the stories before you do even, I knew would help me make great decisions. We went into the studio in a couple batches of time over a 2-year period almost, and recorded in little small clumps the songs that I had worked on or that I thought I should bring to the table. Some old, some new, and some that were written the night before. And I think that's about what it takes to make a good record. So let's get started.
Oh, take me back to the first dream. I wore blue jeans, tighter than goddamn Springsteen.
So the record starts off with First High. I couldn't pick another song to be the opener because that pulsing beginning just got the mode going that I was going for when I wanted to make a record with Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. I wanted to make a rock record. I wanted to make a record that played off the songs that I had already been writing, and First High was a impactful anchor for the record because it was kind of harkening back to like my old high school days, growing up in a small town, complaining about that small town, driving off into distant cities to try to catch live shows, and daydreaming about getting out of there, which I did do and had a great time. But during the last few years of like that pandemic or reflecting, whatever it was, I started to think about all the things I'm grateful for back there. Like having that tab on credit, just like the opening line says, where I could go and fill up my tank of gas and haul ass with my friends down to Atlanta, Georgia, or Charlotte to catch a show, maybe both if we really loved the band. I think the farthest I drove in my early days was down to Daytona, Florida to see Jimmy Eat World. I loved pop punk or whatever that was, and things like Radiohead. But I think about those times and how they inspired me to the creative process that led me to here. And I thought that if I could make a song that sounded like my version of a Sheryl Crow song and something I'd drive real fast to, it'd sound something like First High.
I can do whatever I wanna, all by my lonesome. If there's a problem, well, you can't say shit, 'cause I'm going my way, living and dying, knocking by my own damn denim and diamonds.
Next on the album is Denim and Diamonds, the title track. Kind of a funny story because, to be honest, I didn't realize that I had already owned the name Denim and Diamonds legally for a few years. I think one night when I was maybe drinking a little tequila and smoking a little pot and thinking about the Denim and Diamonds nightclub in Nashville, Tennessee that I had heard about, and the different legends of the way it was used in pop culture, like in an episode of Sex and the City where they had a Denim and Diamonds party. I thought about how much I liked the juxtaposition of two things. That's where High Class Hillbilly came from. That's why I'm a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. I can't really pick what I want to eat at the restaurant. I want a little bit of everything. And I think Denim and Diamonds was my opportunity to make that kind of record, but also that kind of song. I think of this record and that anthem that I tried to write as that track to be something that could be something women could stand up for, obviously, because of the lyrical content, but just for anyone that feels defiant for the purpose of just enriching their lives or pushing forward. Cher said it best, like her mother told her she needed to hurry up and marry a rich man. She said, "Mom, I am a rich man." I think I saw that on a little blurb on the internet, and it just kind of stuck right in me. So I had to bring it out and use it to just say, I can do whatever I want. So it had to be the title track long before it was written, but I'm glad that the song itself kind of lived up to its reputation. The way it was recorded with the band, and I think it's the most influenced by Josh's personal music in terms of the production, and that makes me get real excited to feel like I'm pushing a little bit of the strongest rock edge because of that production. It's pretty good, and then things take a slower turn.
But I'm faded, the destruction is running through my blood. I'm shameless again.
When we get to Faded, I needed to put it at the front of the record. It was like I didn't want it to get buried because it's a little bit dramatic. It's a really sad song. It was written during a sad period 10 years ago. And I was talking about how for this record I was pulling up the past and the things that, maybe the vulnerabilities I didn't want to expose to people at the time that they happened. And also the way that in a studio you can be gathered with a group of individuals and start to be, I'm very empathic, it turns out. It's a term that everybody knows about now, that I happen to be, where I absorb the nature of the room very easily. So with everybody going through their own life's experiences as we're making the record, I felt like sometimes when I went into the studio to play a song, I was playing as a little token offering to them of something that I had written that might have a shared sentiment. And so I brought Faded into the room knowing that it was a darker tone, but that, it might still easily be resonated with. And the result was beautiful. I love the sound of Josh Homme's voice, and I say his use of it is almost like a horn. It's very like broad and low and kind of aching. And so I asked him if I could get him to sing a little bit on that track, and I think it filled it out nicely. And I definitely learned that with some of my songs, it's worth the wait to get them onto an album.
I was born tough, torn up, and hardened by time. I've been let down all around, discouraged by life, and it gets hard not to cry.
When I'm thinking about a record, I kind of want to make sure by the first half of it, I've kind of left you wanting more. So I want to leave some of the heavy hitters, and I also want to make sure you catch a little bit of all the vibes that I am putting forth. And so Born Tough, kind of had to stay up there in your attention span. This song I stumbled upon just with that melody in my head of the chorus, thinking about how I was born and raised to be tough. I think my dad, I've always thought I would maybe have a child named Buck if I did, just because my dad was going to call me Buck if I was a boy. He was planning on 2 boys. He got 2 girls, so he just raised us like 2 girls who could do everything boys could do. And that was great because my mom was tough as nails. He met her through motocross, and she could ride a dirt bike and golf better than anybody and drive a car faster than you just because she's wilder than you. And I think between the two of them, I built up the ability to tolerate and go through a lot at a young age that carried through into becoming an artist and becoming a touring artist, and a touring artist that eats a lot of shit, as you have to when you're out there in a van. And I just started thinking about the sentiment of, the moments that have gotten me through, like crying, which is honestly sometimes that breaking point that pushes you forward again. And I just expressed it all there in that song, which felt very tough sounding, but is quite vulnerable if you listen to the lyrics. I think it exposes some of my childhood roots, really plainly, and shows you the character or the persona that, like I said, I may have created in Highway Queen, but that I actually possess in the sense that I do mean what I say, and I mean business, and I don't like to be pushed because I'll push back in that way. And I think maintaining that for anybody that's trying to do something creatively or differently, like, you know, you have to make sure the rest of you's in check, but you should definitely be willing to put your foot down and say, you know, that's enough.
Sometimes you gotta try a little harder to get what you want.
Try a Little Harder was actually the first song that I wrote for this record. I called it the cornerstone. I couldn't write for a while, or I was hiding little seeds of songs. I didn't really want to share them with anyone because I was afraid to record and have to go tour again. And then this crazy pandemic came and nobody could tour, and all of a sudden I had a lot more time and space than I'd had in the last 15 years of living moving away from home and taking care of myself as an adult, you know. So I didn't know what to do with that time except for to dive into the creative process. But you see that breaking point there right at the beginning with Try a Little Harder. And knowing that it was the first, it just had, I have a gaggle of dogs coming in the house during my video. But it just had to start with a place where I said, you know, I'm worn out. And so as I was exploring that, I say sonically I was listening to a lot of Nick Lowe at the time. And I wanted to write my version of a Nick Lowe song. And the way that I did that was just to think about some of the things he talks about, home wrecker, and it's like happy melodies that are actually talking about crazy scenarios or something. So I spelled out some of my personal struggles in the form of song and asked myself what I'd prescribe myself for life's difficulties, and it would just be to keep trying and to keep singing, and literally and figuratively, I imagine. And I thought that recreating that kind of like hymnal approach to a song where I just kept reminding myself of that perseverance would propel me forward, as I do believe it does. And in the instance of this album, this song had to happen to propel me forward into even making one.
As long as I can be good enough for you, it's good enough for me.
I wanted to make sure that the second side of the record opened with Good Enough. Good Enough might be like my favorite song I've ever written, primarily because I try to write love songs, and I'm normally writing songs about feeling jilted or being mad. You know, I love to write a song about defying a man, or a breakup song or something. It's hard in that search of being willing to be super vulnerable to talk about things like love or loss of love or loss of loved ones, you know. And I don't know, Good Enough was something to me that I had started writing. I say that most great songs are written in 4 hours or less, and I don't know if that shit is true. I just say that because when I start writing a song, I sit down and I commit 4 hours of my attention, which is very hard for me to do, and I try to start spitting it out. And normally when I start, it's done. There might be one verse or one bridge that I need to write in studio, because you know I'm not going to open that song again until we get to a studio, probably, if I think it's ready to go, because I'm just working on the rest of my life. I got all these things going on. I wish I revisited those songs, but I leave them kind of like seeds for a little while. And then when I get to the studio, I put them out. And so I think that Good Enough for me is the longest song it's ever taken me to written, because it's taken 3 years. I wrote the chorus in Germany. I was thinking about perseverance. I was thinking about partnership and trying to be part of a partnership and provide enough sustenance to take care of that person, but also take care of myself, and how I just wanted to be good enough for that partner, right? And I thought about my grandparents and a 65-year marriage, something I probably can't physically attain at this point, but to watch was so beautiful because of the different ebbs and flows that it took for them to get through. So thus the vows and the ability to agree to keep trying for a long time. So I had to write that song about someone else's love to finish it. I wrote all those verses driving up to the Burl in Lexington, Kentucky one day. I just started spitting out the lyrics, which became thinking of my granddad teaching us to dig in a quartz field for hours at a time to find shiny geometric rocks, and how all of those life's lessons would teach me to maybe endure the test of time with someone or in some environment later on.
What you gotta do what's right whether you like it or not. 'Cause the grass is greener on the other side, but you got no place to hide.
Live and Love is a short, simple song. It has been around with me for 10 years, and it was something that I had approached and actually have some pretty good versions of in other capacities out there that maybe one day will show up that we have recorded and tried. But I just couldn't quite get something about the cadence and the sentiment right. And I think it's about that time period I'm exploring with Denim and Diamonds, which is the reflective period. The fact that it was too sensitive, too hot to the touch when I wrote it years ago, because as simple as it is, it tells a kind of a personal dark story that is about remembering to look for the light and pursue that instead of things that are going to get you in big trouble or burnt or just downright depressed, you know. And so I like hearing that happy melody that talks about perseverance, like most of the record does, while knowing my own, you know, little secrets that make me write these albums. And hoping that you'll have your own narrative that will make 2.5 minutes like seem right for you.
She'll seduce the nation, set their hearts on fire, push your limitations, make you walk the mile. If you're prone to temptation, you better not step. She'll spin you up and spit you out, she'll leave you rolling scared. She's a black widow.
Black Widow is kind of, to me, one of the most rock songs on the record just because we were able to really let loose. It was cool to have double drums from Carla Azar and Matt Helders from Arctic Monkeys. Josh had tried to book both of them because the studio dates had changed and availability had changed. And when we got into the studio and everybody was available, oftentimes both showed up to the studio. We were having a great time during that time period. We were having to like test in to be able to hang out. So once we had a bubble going, we were really probably keen on spending time together. So we saw everybody every day, whether or not we were working on certain instruments. And I thought that was really fun. So we had the opportunity then to have double drums on something like Black Widow. I think in general, just the fun nature of getting everybody together for the back half of the song and the clapping, you know, just the energy was just pulsing the entire way through. And it's kind of indicative of how the environment is when you have curated players like Josh Homme picked, Mikey Shoes from bass, Elaine Johannes playing any stringed instrument that we called upon, Carla and Matt, and then also Matt Penn, who is my pedal steel player and guitar player, and lend a hand on every aspect of this record, mentally and physically as we went through it, just to kind of help make sure that I felt like my voice was maintained. Josh actually insisted on me bringing someone just for my own, you know, comfort, and I was happy to have someone that could help me make creative decisions and also gain the confidence and friendship of Josh also as a player, because it made it just very collaborative.
Come on, brother, grab a chair. We go together and tell us a story you'd like to share. Go on and let your guard down, or you can take a minute to sit right back. You don't have to make a sound. Just take what you want from it. Go on and pass it down.
Pass It Down I look at as like a personal assignment. Again, I was looking at the tone of some of the things going on in my life and in people around me as immediate environment, and I thought about how I might need to go back to Al-Anon for a minute. And I grew up, you know, in a family where there was alcoholism, and I needed to seek a community to understand some of the struggle that we were all experiencing. And growing up, I was like, kind of almost embarrassed to talk about something like that because it seemed heavy. But I realized I was also going to church. You know, I had grown up in the South, and that was important. And the family member with the alcoholism was going to AA, and everybody was just seeking, you know, the help of their community. And now that's what I've found in my own life, just in my musical community, and the fact that everybody I know can sit down in this room with a guitar or a mandolin, or now that Sierra Farrell's playing the fiddle, and we can sing out our problems to one another. But Pass It Down for me was just reminding myself and reminding those that are near and dear to me to take a seat and talk to those next to you in whichever way you feel comfortable. I don't care what the outlet is, as long as you're sharing it and realizing that we're all kind of human and we've all got the same struggle. And then also trying to make whatever gospel that is that I've now created, you know, by being in that tone, just sound really cool and groovy.
Chimayo, can't keep it for myself. It belongs to someone else. Chimayo, it's
So the record's almost over real quick. It's 35 minutes or something, but one of the longest songs and the undisputed, like I never had to think that there would be another closer for this album just because of the lyrical content, ese el final, which is, this is the end. You know, my 2 lines in Spanish that I had to Google for hours to figure out something that would rhyme with the song that was in Spanish that I could say in an interview or now incorrectly, you know. But I was trying to tell a story of the Chimayo region, which is in New Mexico, and is a weaving that has become popular as a souvenir of the past from the 30s to 50s that was sold as blankets, as tapestries, as jackets and purses, you know, and various kind of applications. And these jackets in particular are where my story came from, where I had sourced a bunch of them early on, knowing that they were really cool and rare, and they've now grown to value in the thousands. Doing what I do, I have a lot of people working around the house, and sadly one of the young girls that was working for me, who I thought we would know each other because of our family's affiliation or whatever, had a compulsive desire to take all my things from underwear to toothbrushes, and she ended up with one of my Chimayos. And so as I was writing the song, and songs for the records, I guess I'd say as I was writing the songs for the records, Gabe Simon sent me an email one night that said, see if you can do anything with this. And it was a dramatic song, pretty close to what you hear here on the album, although not played by Elaine Johannes, who just destroyed on that nylon guitar. But he said, see what you can do with this. So I listened to the track, and I was like, this is incredible, but why did you call it Chimayo? And he said, I don't know what a Chimayo is, but every time you talk about it, you get really mad. And so I sat down and I thought about my personal narrative, the way that it's just an item, but the way it was taken from me will affect me deeply for a long time, just because it will make me feel like things aren't safe in my own house, you know, or could have done that. And I thought about the stories of the lineage of just maybe the Chimayo region, and how you might take something from someone as simple as a blanket, as I talk about in the story, but as many valuables were stored away in that time period. Maybe that blanket was lined with gold or spiritual sentiment or however, and you've actually impeded on that person's existence or life by doing something like that to them. So the story of a great battle, I guess, in that way, and hopefully just fitting for you guys as a way to end a story about personal life and struggle, and a great finale. Well, I hope you enjoyed your time. If you're still here, you have a lot of patience and you know a lot of my secrets. Denim Diamonds was an important record to me. I feel like it checked off a lot of the boxes that I wanted to meet creatively, and I was really impressed with the body of work that we made, and I hope you're going to enjoy it, and maybe have already listened and you just wanted to hear the stories behind how we got to this moment, and I hope you have a good evening.
Ese fue el final. Chimayo.